We strive to work safely every day, but sometimes accidents do happen.
All right, my name is Dennis Medlin. I'm a family man. I have 5 children of my own, plus 2 nephews that I take care of. I'm a millwright here at Suwannee Lumber. I work in a planer mill. And we had a board jammed inside a transfer belt leading out to our hog. I shut the disconnect off, went around the other side of the wall. I had a coworker watch the disconnect for me instead of putting a lock on. I didn't have it with me at the time. And when I went around the wall, he had a jam in his trim saws and walked away 5 feet away. You know, not very far, not just probably 20, not even 20 seconds, long enough for someone to look at the disconnect, see that it was off, and turn it back on, while I had my hands on the drive belt to the transfer belt, which I was attempting to spin backwards to get the board, you know, to spin the transfer belt backwards so that I could pull the board out. As I normally would have both hands on the belt to spin it backwards, I had an eerie feeling, and I tried to do it with my hands open, pushing up on the belt to pull it backwards, and someone obviously kicked it on while I had my hands on it still, and took the end of my finger off.
Well, I'd been working here about 7 years, and the chipper blowpipe had stopped up with sawdust. If it gets wet, it stops up the blowpipe. It's hard as concrete, real hard to get loose. And what we used to do was take a steel cable, run it up through the blowpipe, and 9 times out of 10, it'll force its way through that sawdust. And once you get a hole started in it, the rest of it will blow out. When we was feeding it up, instead of working through the sawdust, it folded back around. And when it started back down, it fell and hooked on that chipper wheel, which was still running. When it fell on it, it hooked on it, and it started winding that cable up. And me, I was always standing on the ground, pretty much, you know, quite a bit of ways from it. When that cable started winding up, it was fishtailing on the ground. And when it came by me, it just slapped me. It just was like a gunshot. It just shattered my elbow, tore a big chunk out of it, and broke my arm in 2 places up here.
I'm the oldest, then it was Scott was next brother to me. He was 40 years old. I think Scott had worked here a couple of times, and at that time I think Scott had been here probably 6 years, maybe at the time, I'm not sure, but Scott was the chip and saw operator that he actually ran the piece of equipment, and I was actually the millwright on night shift that took care of the piece of equipment. And it was on a Saturday, August 26, I think it was 2006, I think it was. Scott had, apparently when I got the call and came out here, he had went around to the breaker and locked it out, and it was a hydraulic. We had done some work to the machine, and you had to lock this particular breaker out before you got into the machine, and he was changing knives and left the hydraulics on. He got up between the heads and sat down on the where the wood runs through the middle of the machine there, can't think of it, but anyway, the guide, sat down on it, changed the knives. When he sat down in there and blocked the photocells, it closed on him and crushed him. So, and you know, it's just, it looked like he had went around there and locked the breaker out, but he had took his lock back off and set it back on top of the breaker. So, I mean, it was just you know, whether he forgot or he just had something else on his mind, he just failed to lock it out, you know, and turn it off properly. You know, when it hits home like that, I mean, I remember the day I got the call, I was outside working on a old truck I had, and my mama had called me. You know, said Scott's dead. And I said, what you mean Scott's dead? She said, well, he got killed, called out. They called from the mill, said he'd got killed. So you know, at that time it just, you know, I didn't know what to do. So that's how easy it is to lose your life. You just, you know, at 1 minute you're here, next minute you're gone. And plus, the death he experienced was, I'm sure, very painful, you know, for a little while anyway. So it's that's just how easy it happens.
In my experience, there are two groups of employees who incur accidents while on the job: new employees and long-term employees who have become complacent. I encourage you to work safely and remain focused while on the job, and always follow safety procedures.